Hi there. Today I want to talk a little bit about the habit that we have, or rather the situation that we have in the Megxit community, where we oftentimes have to go on kind of flimsy evidence to kind of make points or make sense out of what we see within the Megxit drama. Now, overall, because of that, what we end up getting is there are things in our community that we accept as facts, when in actuality, all they really are myths. We really don't know. Now, an example of what I mean by this is the Sandringham Agreement. We really don't know very much about the Sandringham Agreement other than what we heard from Harry. Yes, the Queen made a brief statement, basically in which she said nothing more than they are stepping back, they won't use the HRH, and they will pay back the cost of renovating Frogmore. That's about it. Other than that, we then have Harry's version of it. The problem there is that everything that was not corroborated by the palace, I consider that suspect because I don't trust a word Harry says. So it leaves us in a bit of a limbo with the Sandringham Agreement in that we don't really know what it says. But the problem is that we all consider this to be like a given within the community and within the events. And I think that's a mistake because those givens, those, facts that we kind of go by, we don't really know any of them. It's like when the Markles say that Meghan is 43 years old. Well, they can say that all they want. That doesn't necessarily make it the truth. Because, as we know, they aren't always telling the truth. So I wanted to, with that all in mind, take a look at one of the figures in the Megxit community that gets this automatic authenticity and kind of make sure that we're all on the same page on exactly who it is we're discussing, so that we can gauge better their veracity and their authenticity and, most importantly, their credibility. Now, we have people in the Megxit community these days going around left and right claiming that they are going to sue people for defamation. So with this sickness taking hold, I didn't want to just do like a deep dive because I know how that can get misconstrued and whatnot. So instead, I thought I would focus on myth busting. In other words, taking the things that we consider to be facts and kind of looking back and saying, well, are they? Are they really? So to start out with, it requires a little bit of background, of course. And again, because of all these sue-happy people these days, I am going to do as much as I can to stick within her own words, Lady C's own words, and other people's own words about her, so that I am not the one saying these things, but they are. I am merely reporting what is said by others. Now, according to Lady C, this is a photo of her and her younger sister. Now, in case you don't know, Lady C was born with a birth defect. And as a result, given the timing and where she was growing up, I would imagine, they made a decision to raise her as a boy. And it wasn't until she was older, in the United States, I believe, that her grandmother paid for her to have the gender surgery that she required in order to continue living as she felt she was, rightfully she was, which is a woman. Now, I can't even begin to imagine how difficult that must have been for her, not only as a child, but it's one of those things that, whereas most of us, by the time we are no longer children, we no longer have to deal with whatever, insecurities or issues or things that people made fun of us maybe as children. I mean, as she grew older, it wasn't going to make that any better because then she had a whole different set of challenges to go along with that. And I certainly do admire the courage and the strength that it took for her to kind of make her way through the world with that. I certainly admire her. Now, although Lady C is now styled as a member of the aristocracy, she did not grow up in that role. And I mention that because she has often claimed that only people who grow up in that environment are able to adequately understand the challenges of the people in that environment. It's unfortunately, to me, it sounds as though it's a little bit of a poor little rich girl kind of concept, not referring to Lady C, but saying that, oh, only people who grow up in the aristocracy can understand their struggles and the nuances that they understand. Well, unfortunately, she's incorrect about that, because there's something called education, which can, in fact, teach people those things. Now, when it comes to education, people might wonder why it is that from time to time I mention the fact that Lady C's education was, in fact, at the Fashion Institute of New York. And the reason I mention that is when you are going to demean someone on the basis of their education, you kind of want to come to the table with something equivalent to what you are demeaning. And personally, in my opinion, the degrees that I received, including one that is a master's degree, in fact, in education, the fact that I personally don't consider a degree from Fashion Institute to be equal. I guess you might say that if Lady C is a snob in the ways that she is a snob, I am what you might call an education snob. And I believe that my education gives me a little bit of an edge over her when it comes to discussing things such as history. One of the things that I studied while I studied history was, in fact, British history. And that includes the kings and the queens and things that may have happened over the years, such as abdications or even, in fact, things such as taking away of titles. And I also understand that all of these things are based on a precedent, meaning how has it been done in the past, because that's the way that it's most likely to be accepted as being done in the future. And so when you are talking about whether or not Harry and Meghan can get their titles removed and who can do the removing, one of the things that I am aware of is how it has happened in the past. And that's why I think Lady C has been a bit disingenuous in telling us that there is only one way for it to happen in the future. I would disagree with that. This is, in fact, Lady C's wedding photo, which I had never seen before. Beautiful photo. Now, they were, in fact, married after only knowing each other for 5 days. They were married in New York City, and their marriage lasted a grand total of 14 months. They were separated within 10 months and divorced within 4 from that. Now, one thing that I personally have an issue with is someone who got a title due to a marriage that happened almost 50 years ago, still using that title, and then her turning around and criticizing and calling Meghan someone who was just gunning for a title. You kind of, again, you're not bringing exactly your best foot forward to the table when you start criticizing that in Megsy. Think Megsy married Harry for the title and the money? Hell yeah. And the status, all that stuff? Absolutely. Do I think she's wrong for it? Absolutely. However, I didn't do the same thing. So I can therefore criticize it better than someone who, in their own history, so kind of sort of has the same situation. Don't you think? Now, might you take the exact same facts and put them together and come up with the fact that Lady C can still be credible? Absolutely. I'm only giving you my opinion and my point of view. Doesn't mean that it is the only one. It's just important to let you know where I'm coming from, because what that is my bias that I bring to the situation. And it's very important that people always tell what their bias is when they are telling a story, so that the person who's listening has a better understanding of being able to judge and evaluate their credibility. So, for example, I don't know, if I were to say, I have never, ever eaten pizza, but I am going to tell you that pizza is bad for you, and it tastes awful, and no one should ever eat pizza. And then you were to find a photo of me eating pizza, sit down, and I had a giant smile on my face, loving every minute of it, then you would have to then question the credibility of my statement saying that pizza was bad and nobody should eat it. It's basically either hypocrisy or I'm being disingenuous and lying for some other reason. So that is just to kind of give you an idea of why it's important to take any sort of misconceptions or misunderstandings and make sure that we're all on the same page with them. Really make sure that any bias is at least acknowledged ahead of time. So when we talk about Lady C criticizing Meghan, does that mean Meghan is okay, that Meghan hasn't done anything wrong? No, not at all. All it means is that given Lady C's experience and history, you have to wonder why it is that she is saying something very negative about Meghan when she herself might have something very similar in her background. It's just important to note that, so that when you take the next step in evaluating what Lady C says, you're doing it with the right perspective and aware of all of the possible motivations for what it is that she's saying. One thing to keep in mind is that just because Lady C may be saying something that is biased, and it might be worth noting that her opinion on the matter is biased, it doesn't mean it's wrong. It could still be the right thing. She could still be saying something right, even if perhaps she ought not to be the person saying it because of her own bias. Now, when Lady C presumably realized that, she had made a choice or whatever, not to get married again, or whatever it is, which I would guess she probably did make that choice, because in most cases, once she got married, she would then lose the right to use the title Lady Colin Campbell. Usually in divorce settlements such as that, the idea is that you are given the right to use the title until you remarry. And I would imagine no one would have predicted that a young, beautiful woman, would in fact never again marry. I would assume that they probably expected her to, gave her the standard deal, and instead, Lady C has chosen to remain single. But she does have 2 young sons, and apparently, and this was news to me, she has what she calls her gusband, and that is her gay husband. And she has actually, for all intents and purposes, from what I have been able to determine, she has essentially lived with him for 35 years. He is her regular standard partner, although he's gay. Lady Colin Campbell's secret husband. He's been by her side for 35 years, and here, for the first time, Peter Coleman explains why they are more than just friends. Lady C was on I'm a Celebrity, Get Me Out of Here, which was a reality show where they were in a jungle, I think. I don't think they were on a deserted island. I think it was, in fact, the jungle. And, it's kind of one of those TV shows where they put celebrities in these rather unpleasant situations. And it's a game where you try and, be the last one standing. It may not come as exactly a shock to you to learn that there were times where Lady C had trouble getting along with her castmates. And, in fact, Lady C did use a supposed story that a relative had been buried alive, and that's why she was unwilling and unable to take on one of the challenges that were a part of, the game and the contest and whatnot. And apparently Coleman came out to defend her on that. Now, I thought this was a little bit funny. In fact, a little bit downright ludicrous. Here he says it's absolutely true that many of Georgie's relations have been murdered, points out Coleman indignantly, his color rising, including her grandfather, Lucius Smedmore, in 1963, killed by a burglar in Jamaica, and one of Georgie's distant cousins who was buried alive. Now, I'm going to go out on a limb here and say that most of us probably have a relative, if you go back far enough, who's been murdered. And the fact that she had a distant cousin who was buried alive, again, something that most of us would probably be able to say. I'm not at all suggesting that Lady C was lying. Quite the opposite. I'm sure she does have a relative that was murdered, buried alive, all of these things. But I'm not believing that it was a relative whose death was so traumatic that it prevented Lady C from doing the challenge. I find that her using that as an excuse is disingenuous. It's not lying, it's misrepresenting reality in such a way to twist the situation to her advantage.
Hello there.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Welcome to the Bush Tucker trial clearing.
Yes.
The third trial in a row, a jungle hat trick for you.
Yes.
Well, so far you've handled everything the jungle has thrown at you.
Yes.
And so here we are today. Do you want to find out what this Bush Tucker trial's all about?
Yes, I'd be very interested to know what it is. Yeah.
Okay, well, you know the name of the trial. It's Panic Pit.
Yes.
And below us is the Panic Pit.
Uh-huh.
To get into the Panic Pit, you have to crawl down this hole, through a tunnel, do a left, and then you're in the Panic Pit. You've got to strap yourselves in, lie on your back. Okay? Then, when you're in position, we'll close the door to the pit and the trial will start. Every minute you endure, you'll win a star. Each star is worth a meal for camp. So, there's a maximum of 10 stars to be won because there's 10 people in camp. So, you have to endure 10 minutes.
Okay.
You can stop the trial at any
I'm
time.
not starting it. I have a cousin who was murdered by being buried alive.
Really?
This is a matter of record.
No,
I
that's
am not doing anything that was coffin-like or involved coffins.
And as we said, that's always your choice, Lady C. I think what it is we've left this open to the public. The public wouldn't know that. They wouldn't know your history.
No.
So,
well, several of them ought to, because they would have read stuff about me.
Yes.
But I concede that's most likely 2 to 5%.
Yeah.
And even if they read it, why would they remember it?
Yes.
So the majority
I'm
of people
prepared
who
to
voted
give them the
wouldn't-
benefit of the
Yeah,
doubt.
the majority of people who voted wouldn't have known that history.
Yeah.
And if they had, I'm sure they wouldn't have voted you. But so it is a point blank no. You're
Absolutely
not going to do
a
this.
chance.
Okay.
Not a chance. So,
Well, as I was going to say, Lady C, you can stop the trial at any time, and nobody ever has to face a Bush Tucker trial. It is your prerogative to go back, but of course you do go back empty-handed.
thank you very much.
No, thank you.
Sorry
for coming
that
down.
I would gladly be a sport about things that do not involve things that really are extremely traumatic.
Yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely understand.
We get
No
that,
problem
100%.
whatsoever.
And we'll let you go back. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you.
We'll see you tomorrow.
Thank you. Thank you
Thank
so
you, Lady
much.
C. Thank you.
Nice
Lovely
to
to
see
see
you.
you.
Thank
See you
you.
tomorrow.
God bless.
Have a good
Thank
day.
you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Now, I have to actually say, I've watched a lot of the I'm a Celebrity, Get Me Out of Here. Most of what Lady C was doing for her time in the jungle. And I have to say, I was surprised that she didn't do this, because she actually did something else that I would have said not a chance in hell that she would have done. And that was she had to have one of the banquets, These shows do the things where they make you eat the bugs and stuff like that. And Lady C, I believe, won that challenge. And what I saw with flying colors, she took it like a champ. She also had another little interlude, another challenge that she refused to do, and this one didn't surprise me at all. But the one with the going down into the tunnel, I was actually surprised she didn't do that. But let's look at the other one that she refused rather vociferously.
Use elbow grease to uncover each letter and complete the anagram to make camp better.
I'm sorry, I want to know, what is the reward for this challenge? I've not heard the reward so far.
Well, it looks like...
No,
wait a minute. It says in order to win this special key. So there's a key for something that's going to give us...
I want to know what the reward is.
Let's have a look
There's
in here.
absolutely nothing
Just have a look,
I
though.
won't need in this world that would induce me to participate in something that is a complete injustice. You can all bugger off. I'm going back to camp. There is nothing anybody can say to me that is going to induce me to change my mind.
You won't even give it a go?
Absolutely not a chance.
Are you sure?
Do I look as if I'm not sure?
Well, I just think we might as well just give it a go.
Why should I?
Well, I'm just...
Absolutely not.
Because we
I
don't
think
know,
the whole
look.
thing is an impertinence and an outrage.
No, I know, but look, you know that
No
room?
is the
There's
answer.
A room. There's a room.
No.
There's a room.
I am leaving, and if I have to walk out of this thing altogether, I will do so. Do I make myself clear?
Is there any way you could just keep me company? You don't have to do anything. Just keep me company while I do it.
I wouldn't dream of that.
Why?
I would be colluding with an injustice. My dear, if you are stupid enough, no insult intended, to go along with this, good for you or bad for you. I'm not prepared to have any part in it. And also the fact that these two lazy bums know that I have gone out of my way to feed their greedy guts today. And this is the reward, with them casting us in the role that they actually have earned by their complete passivity? I think not.
I would do it for you.
I would not do it for anyone because I think this whole thing is an outrage. No, it's not happening. I'm not doing it. They're dealing with a wrong person. I have nothing to say to either of you.
Well, you should know that the first thought was chivalry. So we were looking after your best interests.
Oh, and how's that?
Right, now, do you want to explain?
Okay, right, let me explain. This is a game. That's
Some
divisive.
games aren't funny.
But
And
listen.
some things are morally indefensible.
Right, listen.
This is one of them.
No, it's not.
Will you let me
actually.
explain?
You may think it's not. I have said it is to me, and there's no discussion on the subject, my dear. When you were shoveling food down your gullet this morning and yesterday morning,
Hey, take it
who
easy.
do you think prepared it?
I know.
I am disgusted by what happened.
No, that was more along the lines of what, I would have expected Lady C to react. But, like I said, she did handle the challenge of eating, I don't know, she had to eat the testicles of something. And she handled it amazingly. She was a real trooper. I was actually pleasantly surprised that she absolutely went along with it. But, I would say overall, there were more examples of her not going along with things than there were of her going along with things. But let's move on to some other examples of Lady C straight from her own mouth. You may or may not know, Lady C in 2013 bought herself a castle, Castle Goring. And the castle needed a tremendous amount of repairs. She bought the castle for £700,000, £700,000, and has put millions of dollars worth of renovations into it. As such, these renovations, understandably, were a bit on the pricey side. And her going on these reality shows, she had said that she was whoring for Goring. And so she, in fact, also made herself a GoFundMe where she was whoring for Goring. In other words, she was accepting donations for improvements to be done to her castle. And we have a clip of what some of those renovations were like, because she also did a reality show where she went through and did those renovations on the show. I mean, is it just me, or does it not seem that people who do these reality shows, they kind of don't stop? I mean, here she went on I'm a Celebrity. She went on, or she did a show where she did the renovations at Castle Goring. Her sons did Royal World. I mean, it seems to be kind of a habit of sorts. They get into it and then they say, hey, it's a pretty good grift. Let's keep that grift going. Well, the renovation that we're going to see here, it is a rather infamous one. It's Lady C and the cling film. You'll see. It'll make sense. I think that this is a good place to take a bit of a break. There is more. We have more to go over, more to look at, but this is about the halfway mark, and I like to kind of split these longer topics into 2 videos just so that people can, sit down, get a quick fix, and then move on to something else. There's a reason that TV shows, sitcoms, are a half an hour, right? Because that's generally about the attention span before people are ready to look at something else. So there is more to go over. I have more clips, more interesting tidbits and anecdotes, but this is where I'm going to take a break for now, and I look forward to reading your thoughts down in the comments. Thank you very much for listening, and I hope you all have a great day, filled with love, laughter, and of course, dancing.
Dancing